G'day everyone, welcome back to another episode of the Australian Property Investment Podcast. I am thrilled always to bring people what I call best in breed, and I'm absolutely stoked to introduce Vanessa Stoykov. G'day, welcome onto the show.
Thanks for having me.
I appreciate it. We're going to pop the hood on everything financial education, a little bit about your journey and where you've got to date. I'm very, very excited. Before we kick off, so someone's going to get to the end of this episode. What do you think they're going to get out of this chat that we've got in store for today, Vanessa?
Great. Ask me the hard stuff first.
That's it. You know me.
Well, if anything, I hope they come away saying, you know what, I have to have some pretty serious conversations about money with people in my life, because usually, you know, there's triggers and situations that people have that money is a part of that we avoid. So hopefully we can teach some skills on how to have effective money conversations in your life, despite embarrassment, shame, and everything else around it. That would be a great outcome. But also to think differently about money. In this environment, things are so tough. And people have less disposable income than ever, no matter how much you earn.
Yes.
That how you want to live your life and decisions around how you spend your money. Like, I'd love people, you know, big picture, change your life after listening to this podcast.
We've had a few more life-changing conversations. We had a life coach on recently who's very great in this self-permission space as well. I feel like this is an important conversation to have because people are having this conversation inside their head a lot. And they're not able to maybe articulate alone, and it percolates inside their head, get some kind of zooming into what's going wrong or what's going off the rails financially as well. So if this is you, this is an episode. I don't care how many properties you've got. If you think you're earning 250K or if you are earning 250K or you're earning 80K, I'd say the challenges are very, very similar. It's same but different, just on a scaled pain potentially as well.
Yeah, I agree. And you know, there's no such thing. Some people go, oh, that's a rich person's problem.
Yep.
But I mean, living in Sydney, earning 250 grand, most people would say that that's a huge salary. But as you guys know, depending on how big your mortgage or your rent is, that may well not be considered a huge salary anymore.
Absolutely. Absolutely. It's and the analogy we just used before our chat was it's like a business where you go, it's not turnover, it's leftover.
Yeah.
And the same thing would apply for an individual where you go, it's not what gross annual income you get, it's what's actually left over at the very end. And I feel like a lot of people going, I feel like I'm working hard. I feel like I'm earning a good income, but there's not much to show for it at the very end. So we're going to have a chat about that as well. But before we kick off, you've been around, not that you look like the part that you've been in this space for 24 years.
Nice one. I thought you've been around forever, lady.
Hardly. But I think what's even more interesting is you're a mum of three boys. I'm one of three boys. And I don't know how my mum didn't turn grey the whole time parenting us because, we often wrestled each other to hell and suplexes and everything wrestling off the top rope at our household. But take me through a little bit about yourself personally, professionally, your own journey to date.
I have images of you wrestling now. Well, I grew up in a small town called Gunnedah, rural New South Wales. Yeah. My dad was an immigrant from Serbia who came here in his 20s with what he would tell me, with the underpants on my back. I'm always like, Dad, that is not the same. It's a shirt on your back. But one of the many endearing things about my darling father who died 6 years ago. But my mum stayed home and looked after us. Dad worked in the mines in Gunnedah, which is big industry. And from a very young age, well, a town like Gunnedah, there wasn't a big discrepancy between rich and poor. I mean, you could live on the hill or live down near the river. The river flooded, so that was less desirable. But at the end of the day, it was a pretty level playing field. And I think that was a fantastic opportunity to grow up without having to think very seriously about I don't have all money. My dad earned good wages at the mine. I mean, we went on a holiday to a hotel every school holidays. We were going to a Flag Inn or wherever, but we were going to the beach. And it was a really idyllic childhood. I had the double luck of being raised with parents, particularly my dad, who said, you can do anything. Awesome. And when you have that kind of belief in you and encouragement and a mother driving you and doing most things for you, you can't help but turn out to be, I guess, ambitious for yourself and have a strong belief. So I did pretty well at school. I found academics, English, communications, those things that was my style. I went and studied journalism at uni. And the uni course that I did was University of Canberra, but it was 91 to get into that course. So there was some incredible brains in there. And some of my best friends did that course. And Will Anderson, the comedian, was my flatmate at uni. There were a lot of great people like Adam Harvey in that course, Kelly Hush. There was all these people who've become serious players in their field. And that was an exciting playground. So I've always found learning interesting, and I think that has continued today, like being around clever people. Yeah. So I've never claimed to be the cleverest myself. I'm a good communicator, but I'm really rubbish at maths, which you're like, oh God, I've got a financial educator on that's rubbish at maths. But what I've really specialised in is communication, conversation, psychology around money. Yeah. So having worked in my first job out of uni was Investor Weekly magazine. I was reporting on institutional funds management. I had no idea what I was writing. I literally was great at shorthand. So I wrote every word that these high-end fund managers said and published it. And they were like, wow, you have an uncanny understanding of this. I'm like, really? That was pre-internet though, right? I'm 50. I'm 51 this year. So, but I learnt, A, that I was never going to be as smart as these people, but B, there was this big gap because whilst they were incredibly intelligent, they had no ability to explain what the hell they were talking about in plain language. And it took me a long time to understand what they were talking about, and therein lay the opportunity for me to start my own communications firm. And I did go and work for an insurance company, for Zurich, for a while, which I actually loved, and did business development. And I worked for a company called Equity Link, and that was a game changer for me. The CEO there, Uma Sananakone, was the first woman I'd ever met that earned over $1 million. Wow. And she was incredibly gracious with her time, with her teaching of me, and really mentored me. So mentoring of younger people coming through has been something that I've always been very conscious to do, because I have been very lucky. My first boss in journalism, Greg Bright, mentored me. Like, I've had all these people along the way who've invested their time. And I encourage people at our age to, you're not as old as me, I didn't include you in that, really
I'm catching up, don't worry.
Think about how to mentor the next gen, because it's so important. And you don't realise how important those lessons are till much later when you look back and go, wow, I was so lucky to have that.
Isn't it? I think if you're the beneficiary of that, where you go, someone has taken their time out to then open doors for me and share their knowledge and wisdom, that set me up to succeed, you almost feel responsible to pass that on,
forward.
don't you?
Yeah,
absolutely.
Pay it forward.
I love it. And I guess this has culminated you into becoming what they call a financial educator. I'm very keen to understand a little bit more about that, because as you kind of go into this world, you go, okay, there's people that are financial educators. Is it purely a course, or they actually come from a place of love where they're trying to show, I guess, improve financial literacy? And I said it's a bit like 18,000 brokers. There's good and then there's great. So what makes a great financial educator, do you think?
I think it depends on what you need to learn. So there are some brilliant, I mean, Scott Pape's been an incredibly successful financial educator, and writing the book that he did and showing people how to split their savings was game changing, because people didn't understand that. So that kind of almost technical and instructional financial educator is very valuable. That's not me. You're like, great. But I'm a storyteller. So what I do is write stories that make people understand, okay, I think like that, or I know someone like that, or, because we relate far better to stories than we do information. Nice. So, and I've been a journalist. We've made television shows. We've won global awards for our television shows around finance and investing, The Secrets of the Money Masters, which, we put celebrity, real sports people up against big name fund managers like Kerr Nelson from Platinum, like big end of town stuff. And I've always liked combining these really technical people in finance with everyday people or people outside the industry, because then it's their challenge to communicate with them. And communicating in finance, it's still really difficult, and there's still a lot of acronyms, and a lot of people don't understand it, and they're too afraid or ashamed or, to ask people.
Great. Yeah, that sentiment, I would definitely want to come back to that in a second. The book, I got our whole team to read The Psychology of Money recently.
Great book.
Loved it. And I'm just going to quote a little part here, and I think the penny dropped for me, which is the difference between wealth and being rich. So being wealthy and being rich. So if you're rich, you have a high income, but being wealthy is something different. Wealth is not visible. It's the money you have that's not spent. And I feel like I just want to go there with you. You've done a lot of research potentially in this space as well, where you've studied a lot of people that are wealthy and you've studied a lot of people who are rich. What distinctions have you seen?
I've seen it in my own life, to be brutally honest. The girl from Gunnedah wanted all the shiny things. So buying my Mercedes and BMWs and diamonds and we, I've bought 4 properties and sold, but we'll get to that all at the wrong time. I would say that I've spent the first 15 years of my career, having started a business at 26, and, I've had a multi-million-dollar sale of one business. I built a video training platform called No More Practice for financial advisors, and it was acquired by a listed company in 2018. So whilst I have done some really cool things and made a lot of money, I've also spent a lot of, I would say I probably classified my mindset as I feel rich, not I am wealthy. And it's a real regret that I have, that I am more than happy to share. It's one of the reasons I do what I do. I'm a financial communicator, and yes, I do make good money from that. But I made decisions based not on the best information that I could have processed. I made them very emotionally. And I think a lot of people make emotional money decisions because you want that house, or you want that car, or you want to do that trip, but you never realise the opportunity cost till later. So
what have you learned in hindsight? Because this is everything, conversations that I have, which is, and I think we're all guilty of in our mind going, I work damn hard. I think I should treat myself a little bit, and if I push myself upwards, then I'll think bigger and I'll work harder and I'll work better. Is it that we're chasing something here? Is it trying to fill a void? Or do we go, look, are these brands aspirational? We see ourselves as aspirational because we're earning a certain dollar amount, and the other part is now we can buy it as well. Like we actually have the means when you're earning a certain income to go and afford a BMW or a Mercedes as well. What have you seen with money behavior?
Well, delayed gratification, right? That's always been a challenge for me, for most people. And the more you learn it, the more powerful it becomes. But I think more than that, it's around life design. Because when I was younger, I just knew I wanted all these things and to go here and to have that. I didn't think about really the life I wanted to live. I thought about the things I wanted to have. And as I've gotten older, I mean, I had a business with 29 staff. We had to earn $250,000 a month to keep the doors open.
Absolutely, yeah.
That was a lot of pressure. And I loved it. I thrived in it. And my boys were in the business. I had a nanny on staff. So I had my life set up to live that way. But as I've gotten older, what I realise is that important concept of turnover versus what's left over. I mean, I can run at a much lower cost using contractors, doing more myself, and not outsourcing everything. I can make much more money than I did when I had a massive infrastructure, the ground floor of a 124 Walker Street. I have learnt that, but I wouldn't give up that experience, because running a bigger business helped me build a brand, helped me build profile and the ability to sell the business that I did, No More Practice. But I wish I would have learnt it a little earlier because it was very stressful. My 40s, I was glad to say goodbye to be honest. It was a very stressful period.
I mean, if I look at the people that we speak to in their 40s, it's like now they've got the means and the ability. So what I mean by that is they've got their incomes have now started to pick up. They've come out of their 30s. Now they're moving to like middle management, senior management roles. Incomes are high. They've bought properties, which means there's equity. There's a chance now to put down some good roots, buy more properties, renovate the home. Now it's family, so they can go on holidays as well. So there's a mix of, hey, I want to grow my wealth, but I also want to enjoy my life. And it's this period of like 40s is the chance to take advantage of this good income that they're going to have. And it's like, oh, then I'll get to enjoying life and slowing down later. And I've had this conversation with psychologists that I've met in the past going, but what are you waiting for? Like, why aren't you buying that now? Or why aren't you doing that now? And you get really kind of caught in this, I don't know, it's back and forth and mentally going, delayed gratification. But what am I waiting for?
And I could be dead tomorrow.
This is it.
We all think that one is the enemy of smart strategic decisions. I actually spent a lot of time and worked with a really clever firm called the ID Crowd, which Deloitte bought. They are a learning methodology company, And I really tried to crystallize what would help people make those decisions. And I call those moments in life financial flashpoints. And they're points where you've got a financial decision to make. You can't really know what's going to happen down the track. I mean, who could have guessed property would go up as much as it did? But so there's things you can't know. Nobody can know. That's life. But there are things that you can think about if you have a framework, a decision-making framework that you can spend a little bit of time thinking about before you make that decision. And that one of the wisest men I ever had the pleasure of telling their story was Alan Gray, who started Alan Gray Investments and Orbis Investments. And he said, a decision made once is best. So take your time thinking about that. Whereas I would make decisions so quickly because I'm a gut instinct
you almost pride
person.
yourself on that. Like going,
I'm a leader, I can do this. And it really resonated with me on how do I help people build a framework, which is really what my books have been about, around trying to put a framework around how to think about money, how to think about decisions. And then I've built little $5, not expensive, because it wasn't about me making money. It was about me trying to help people be more intentional with how they thought about their life, what they wanted from their life, and how they could make decisions better.
Yeah, it's really profound. How do we have these conversations? Talk about money. It can be relationships. It can be your childhood, for example. These are conversations that can bring up a lot of emotion, very emotionally charged conversations that we're having. And I'll have this with people, and they've, I think I even had this conversation yesterday with the clients. Like, we feel like we've left it too late, and they're late 40s, while the other partner's 51. I was like, the fact that we're having this conversation means you probably haven't left it too late because you still want to do something about it and you still got time on your side. But how do people have this conversation, do you think, Vanessa, without feeling ashamed or embarrassed or judged, for example? Because who do they go to in their inner circle to have these conversations with without going, why are you speaking about money? We're just trying to catch up for dinner.
Yeah, well, I call those courageous conversations, and it's not easy. Money is still a taboo. And at every dinner I ever go to, we all end up talking about money, right? Well, when I'm there, I'm like the plant.
It's like it's property or an interest rate. So yeah, it's same.
Well, I find that part boring. Like I'm like, yeah, whatever. And most of my friends own so many properties now, it really, really annoys me. But because they're just sitting pretty on all this stuff.
Yeah.
But in saying that, I think that it's really about who do you like in your life that you think makes good decisions. Like, look at people you go, I like how they do that, or I love how they've built that property portfolio, or I really like how she finds clothes that are secondhand but look amazing. Like, whatever it is, go and ask that person how they do it. The thing about money conversations is people love talking and people will share their knowledge. So asking the question, not with a loaded, because I want something from you, because people are very conscious of why you're asking me, no strings. I'd like to understand more about, or I don't understand, or how did you do that? Like, they're all good questions to have. And I very much doubt you will get rejected.
Nice one. I really like that as well. I guess this is like culminated into your book, The Breakfast Club for 40 something. So tell me a little bit about how this has come together. What's inspired this as well? Because I feel like like you said, you got something like The Barefoot, which is like a very logical, here's a money guide. And that's what I say about money books. It's kind of one of three categories: how to spend less, how to save more, how to invest better. But I feel like your book has found this really nice little niche going, it's a story. And can you tell us a little bit more about how you...
Yeah, a financial fable, we called it. Yeah. Wiley published that one. And ironically, my book was on the shelf next to Scott Pape. I wrote it in 2017. It came out in 2018 and Woolworths distributed it. And my book was The Subtle Art of Not Giving Up, Scott Pape and me. And I was in really good company. And unfortunately, a financial fable isn't something that people go, oh, yes, I really want to read a story about finances. So I had created a category in publishing where some people had me next to Tony Robbins in self-help. Like, no one could know how to categorize it. So whilst it's clever, but it wasn't all that clever from a sales perspective.
I mean, the other one that I probably think of is The Richest Man in Babylon.
Yeah, exactly. And Who Moved My Cheese in HR. There are really good books, but it's only when you go, oh, Rich Dad, Poor Dad. Like,
yes,
that you go, oh, okay. Like, but I wanted to write it when I was in my 40s simply because I'd either met people, it's, these friends from high school go back to a reunion and they all look pretty amazing on the outside. And then they all sit in the gym and get loaded and talk. And suddenly you realise that most of their lives are pretty stressful. And when you scratch the surface, it was because of money. Yeah. And whether, the guy earning, an accounting firm earning so much, wife staying home, paying off a big mortgage, kids at private school, the stress of that, the strain on their marriage, the fact that she wanted to get a job and do something, and he was quite happy to ignore that because he was just focused on doing a job to make the money. And, so that exposed that real typical dynamic in a marriage where one person feels like they're the person doing all the grind and the other one's the money maker. But the money maker at the end of the day has the power.
Correct.
So, that imbalance is something women need to talk about, but with their men, and men. I mean, I'm raising 3 men, and that the whole concept of equality or deciding on labor and cash division. So, it's
I
so
speak from
important.
experience on this as well. So my dad went to work, my mum stayed at home. So I grew up with a very traditional household in that sense, whereas Bernadette, my wife, both parents worked. And so for Bernie, that's what she's seen. And so for us, our income is, because we run the business together, it's the same. And it's like, there's no power struggle here because we earn the same. It's like, okay, then at home we have to pull our weight equally as well.
Same. Yeah.
And you kind of go, this is unusual because no one has effectively an upper hand here, but how do we then balance? Because a team still needs a captain.
But you know what? You're more likely to have that relationship last because of the equality in it, because equality breeds respect. Right. And when you don't have respect for the other person, it's very hard to keep a marriage alive or a relationship. So I think that's a very great and fortunate way you've structured your life and your relationship. It doesn't mean that you can't decide someone makes more decisions on this at work and someone else does that. Like, play in your lane. Don't try and do something you're not the best at. I always was really good at just finding people who were better than me. And that is a recurring theme in my life. Because I love talent, right? That's what excites me, being around people that are clever. So I could collect that all day long. And I think that's something that Richard Branson calls who, not what, So it's not that profound. It's been said before, but even in a marriage, who's the best at what? And try and avoid resentment.
Yeah, nicely said. So again, the 5 pillars, so in your book, you talk about the 5 pillars of unlearning money. So take us through, in a nutshell, what the 5 are. Yeah,
okay. So those 2 that I talked about, the married couple, they really had to unlearn time, and the wife had to unlearn belief. So time, they had time to do something different. We just talked about that. They had a house. They were getting an inheritance. Her parents were going to leave a house. So how did they design their life so that he could stop doing the job he hated and become a lecturer, and she could start her own business and actually work? So they were really, 1 pillar, time, of making the most of the time you've got. The younger you are, the easier it is. But no matter what age you've got, really leverage that time. And that's a key pillar when it comes to money. Belief is a big one. And that's all around childhood. What you were told when you were growing up, what your belief said. Even if you think I have not been affected, psychologically you're wrong. Like, it is proven that how we grow up shapes our views. So really thinking about your beliefs and do they still serve you. It's okay to say, I don't want to be that person anymore. I'm changing my mind. That's a brilliant place to be, but it has to be intentional. You have to really think about it and look in the mirror and not enjoy what you see sometimes. The truth's a bitch. Another one is focus. And I think when it comes to money, we have a very short-term focus because you want immediate needs, whether that's going out with friends and spending money on dinners. It's so expensive to go out to dinner and that all the time. Absolutely. So, and even ordering Uber Eats or whatever, there's all these things that are focus on the immediate or focus on the medium term of, I want to save for a deposit or whatever, and then the long term of, I don't want to work in a job I hate for 30 years because why am I alive? So, and I encourage people with focus, start out there. What do you really want to see from your life at the end of it? Like, I want to travel and I want to know interesting people and I want to help people. I want to think that I've inspired people to be the best they can be. Like, that drives me. That is my contribution. So when I think about that, then a lot of the stuff that I'd like to have, I'm like, well, don't really need that because that doesn't serve my vision. I could have a very small house to live in, travel when I want to, go out with my friend, have a life where I'm contributing and really happy, but it's not going to cost me multi-millions of dollars. Whereas in my 30s, I would have thought that it did. So that focus is really important too. The other one is action. Like, we can talk all day long, but what do you do? Who do you talk to? Who do you trust? I mean, I've got a free guide on my website, the Vanessa Stoykov website, how to find the right financial planner. Just things to ask them, what they're supposed to be doing for you, like what you should sort of pay. Like, nobody knows. So if you take action, you need to have some confidence that the actions you're taking are the right ones. So talking to people, not just financial advisors or your super fund or your accountant or your broker, more importantly, you're like, yeah, broker, definitely. But also, you know, if you want that life, have you defined what it is? Because then the actions you take can head you to that road you want to be on. And that's important. Like, eye on the prize, eye on the prize.
Yeah, absolutely. I love that. Thank you very much. And then your next book, The 5 Conversations About Money That Will Radically Change Your Life as well.
Yeah.
Take us through this, because this feels like...
Well, this is more instructional. Like, this isn't a fictional story, but it has a lot of conversations, and I've put scripts in there. Like, so the characters from my last book are in there talking. I've got scripts and role plays for people to have conversations with your young kids, with your older kids, with your parents, because this book's about really helping people get the conversation about money started. And one of the big things that has prompted me to write this, and I've been talking about it for ages, I think Crikey called me the self-professed queen, which was kind of an insult, but I'm like, okay, I'm going with it. About yeah, a bit of a kick in the ass, but shank you.
We'll take it.
This intergenerational wealth transfer. Yeah. I mean, the next 15 years are life-changing. Biggest wealth transfer in this country's history. Baby boomers have made more money than any generation in their history. They've been the most successful at building wealth. And the value of what they have and their properties is going to change people's lives. So there's this real opportunity to do it right. So the conversations I focus on, the first one is with yourself, which is really that, what the hell do I want? How did I grow up and can I move forward? The second one is with your partner. How do we want to live together if you have one? But, you know, or what to think about when you're thinking about a partner, how to build equality into that relationship, but then how to negotiate a dynamic where you both are working towards a life you want, even if you don't have it right now. The third is with your kids. So there's 2 parts, young children, and I've raised 3 kids and they've got a pretty good sense of money. My boys have jobs, they're hustlers, like they're both studying business. The third one is clever as, and he's already started his own sneaker cleaning business on Instagram, you know. They're hustlers and I love that. But that hasn't come naturally, they've observed, but there's also been a lot of conversations about money. And even when things have gone badly, I've been really open about that. Yeah. And I think that don't hide that from your kids. I mean, don't go, we're doomed, and put your stress on them so that they're managing your psychosis. Keep that to yourself. Lock yourself in your room. But tell them when things aren't going well. I'm really stretched for money at the moment. This deal didn't work out. That fell over. That client didn't come through. We're not going to be able to do this month, or whatever it is, because kids are better off knowing, because money has shockwaves. Life has, you know, it's an up and down ride. It's not a smooth roller coaster. And if they're in on that from the start and they see you managing your financial stress, which we will talk about, because I think that's the kicker, they'll grow up to be really savvy around how to make, you know, good day-to-day decisions and have the right mindset around money, good or bad.
Absolutely. Yeah, it's almost like when parents have that great relationship around communication, that will then set the kids up as well. It's a learned behavior.
It is a learned behavior.
And I speak to so many people about money. They've grown up believing, you know, rent money's dead money, or that buying a portfolio means you've ripped people off because now you're a landlord. And it's like, these are all stories that people have to unwind, unlearn, undo, for example, to help them, I guess, rewire the way that they look at each other. We don't talk about it versus those conversations where you have open discussions around the budget, the household, what we can afford to spend. Do you get paid as a child for doing work around the house, for example, to learn the value of a dollar? I feel like you've set that really good example as well. So I love the resources that you've got there. Let's go back a step. You said around the boomers handing down wealth. And I think this is huge because our boomer friends cop a fair bit now at the moment. I'm seeing the backlash at the moment because they've obviously had this golden time where they're...
But they didn't realise it, you know. And my mum will say, remember when we had 18% interest rates and the $28,000 house they bought cost, you know, half of Dad's mine income at one point when interest rates went up or whatever. Yeah. So they have, you know, we can look now and go, oh, you lucky bastards. But it's more about the time too. They didn't have climate change. No one thought that was real. Like there was so much, it was still that idyllic, man rules and everything's great sort of era. Yeah. We're all facing very different, you know, times. Global extinction. Working back from that, the price of everything and the cost of putting a roof over your head now and food on the table in very prosperous countries is of real concern.
Do you feel this, like, do you feel like, have we just created a rod for our own back where Sydney's such a great place to live, and now it's become effectively like a rental city now, where people can't afford to get in. We were talking before about a 200K income. 200K income means you're borrowing around 4 and a bit times that. So someone could borrow about 800K. They'll need a deposit on top of that, which is hard to save while they're still renting, which then opens the bank of mum and dad up to go, look, I need money to get into the property market as well. Puts pressure back on parents because they do it for one child. You've got 3 boys, you got to do it for all 3 potentially as well. And it's like, how do we become the lucky country in some regards? And then housing has become such a hot topic at the moment. I feel for younger kids, particularly your age, your boys' ages. How are they going to get into the market without a leg up from a parent?
Yeah, well, 21, 19 and 15, exactly. Yeah. From that perspective, in the book, one of the big conversations to cover is inheritance conversations. And that is actually about very deliberate bank of mum and dad conversations around we will own our own home, or we've got a mortgage, but we've got equity in this. You know, whenever we die, we will split it 3 ways or whatever.
Parents are living for far
well, that's
longer
it.
now.
I mean, you're getting this money when you're 60.
Yeah, by that
who
stage,
cares? I mean, you care, but, it's not like...
They're going to be the grandkids. They're going to be the beneficiaries.
So it's almost like our Generation X, the generation that keeps losing, we kind of miss out because it will go to our kids from our parents. But I think that's a really important conversation to have. I think for Sydney, it's a devastating reality. I know so many people like really struggling. Rent has gone up astronomically. Yeah. Like, I mean, in fact, my rent was just raised, and I rent a property, $200 a week at the last review. And I was like, seems a bit steep, but sure, because everyone's doing it. You can't argue. They just go,
we're going to go
elsewhere.
Yeah, correct.
So it's such a tough place. But what Sydney will lose if it doesn't do something from a policy perspective is the vibrancy of a multicultural city that can afford to have everyone in it. Because what makes us interesting is we're this beautiful melting pot of all different types of people. I live in an apartment on the harbour, and I look down and see the picnics every weekend, and it's all sorts of cultures, all enjoying this beautiful city. Absolutely. And, we're going to lose that and lose what's the greatest about us, because only people who have those big incomes will be able to afford to stay. And either we build better rural policies, I come from the country, and actually look at how we make industry and jobs grow out so people can move and get great opportunities and have the rest of the country thrive. And that is going to have to be a big part of our strategy, because not everyone can fit. But affordable housing is another. I love what the super funds are doing in investing in affordable housing for their members. Deanne Stewart is a friend of mine. She runs Aware Super. They're building housing that nurses and people who work in those caring type professions who don't earn the money but desperately needed essential services people can afford to get in those places. So, there's investment strategy, and it's one thing I love about financial services. So the superannuation industry, high-end investment management, they've got solutions to problems that are faced by the country and the world with smart investment. So impact investing is another thing I'm really passionate about, because that can help solve the problem. But at the end of the day, while ever we have tax laws that give so much tax advantage to having property investment, nobody's going to do anything different but accumulate as many as they can and be a landlord that collects money, because it's the best way to make money. Who wouldn't? So it's going to have to come at a government level. And what government wants to take away privileges on property in Australia? Will you ever get voted in again? So how do we change
saw that recently, elections. And I read Alan Kohler's book recently, The Quarterly Essay, and it effectively unpacked government policy. It's like the only time we've seen slowdowns in property prices when APRA has stepped in and really clamped down on lending. And that's generally the only time you see it. No government intervention can do that. The only times that you see property prices spike is when they've opened up the floodgates for some buyer grants. You saw a spike in prices, for example, as well. And it's going to take a very, very brave government to enact something that impacts property investors.
What it will. It'll take a desperate government. No one's going to be brave in this country when you're sitting pretty in government and it's all marginal. It's going to take the country coming into where the haves and the have-nots have such a big divide that we start to have political unrest and civilian unrest.
Absolutely. We say that all the time. This country will be the haves and have-nots, and it will be based on property in this country. won't it?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And then you get generational poverty again, which we kind of helped eradicate by giving everyone equal opportunity to get. My dad came with nothing.
Yes.
Owned a house in Gunnedah by the end, like sent his 3 children to school. My sister and I went to university. My brother has his own business. He made a better life for his children.
Yeah.
We want to make a better life for our kids, but we can't do it through property. If you only own one and you've got 3, and then is it a deposit for them? Or is it a business? And I encourage people to think there's other ways to grow wealth. I know, we're sitting talking property and you're a broker, and obviously it's a no-brainer that property makes money. But having your own small business can make really great money. Like, there are other things you can do. I mean, building a share portfolio. Both my sons, when they turned 18, I gave them money for shares. My eldest son bought direct shares, my second one ETFs. But they both looked into it. And, that $2,000 or $3,000, it wasn't much money, but they're looking at that all the time, and, that consciousness on those apps. And the apps are incredible, right? There was nothing like that when I was around. Like, to just see how stock markets are moving, how things are happening, has been very valuable. So doing things like that for your kids, like, it doesn't have to be giving them a house, but giving them a small amount and getting them interested in investing, educating them so they can have the 50 jobs they're going to have because there's no job security, and getting them on thinking like a hustler, an entrepreneur. How do I make money out of that? How do I get online and make money? There's so many ways to make money now that I don't understand, because that generation, lives differently online than we ever did. I'm not a digital native. There was no internet when I started work.
It feels almost very New Yorky, doesn't it?
Yeah.
You accept the fact that you're going to be a renter, but you
And
have
that's
to find
okay.
other ways
In Europe, people have 100-year leases.
Absolutely.
Like the mindset around here, and the actual snobbery we have, are you an owner or a renter? It's actually quite unique to this country. You go overseas to the UK or to anywhere in Europe, and people rent and don't care.
Yeah.
But there isn't the shortage of property in there there probably is now, in saying that the markets there aren't all that much better. But it's the mindset we have. I have to own it, bricks and mortar.
Absolutely. The great Australian dream.
Yeah, it is.
Still alive. Going back to the boomers, and I think there was something around, I read that the JB Ware research was like a lot of that money's going to be handed down to females as well. That's an interesting shift as well.
It's exciting, isn't it? Maria Lycouris is the CEO of JB Ware, and she invited me to speak on the panel when they launched that piece of research that they did on women.
We'll find a link and we'll put it in the notes as well.
Yeah, it's a great piece of research because it had a few findings, and she launched it at Dolce & Gabbana, which was so cool. I mean, I can say honestly, women still love pretty things, because we were all there like, at the same time going, I would never be paying $3,000 for that pair of heels. Yeah. But it's art, right? And you can get excited about that without owning it. And I encourage people to go and look at the pretty things and get pleasure from it without having to have it, and enjoy things that way.
That's a real skill.
Too. Oh, I am vicarious. I love listening to people's holidays or looking at beautiful things, because I get a lot of pleasure from that, but I don't have to own it to feel it. And that's a mindset shift. Whereas at some point in my past, I have definitely wanted to own it. It's just that I've changed how I get pleasure from it. So, it's interesting.
Is that self-awareness and self-confidence? Where does that come from? Because I feel like everyone covets what other people have and they want it for themselves. How do you accept that other people have it and you don't?
No, I think it is self-awareness. It's also having some serious ass kicks in my life and having made some really good decisions. And I put my house up to save my business. And I mean, I paid $1.6 million for that magical house in Lane Cove back in the day. And that's worth $4 million now. So I should have just kept the house if it was purely a financial decision. But then I wouldn't have traveled the world, made a Channel 9 TV show, met Michael Parkinson and Jeffrey Archer. And I've had some amazing adventures. So I don't regret that. But that gives me perspective, and perspective gives you an understanding of what pleasure is to you. And I find people really interesting, and I get to talk to lots of interesting people, and I'm stimulated and loved, and have friends that I love and love my family. So, I don't need to have everything. I'm probably already quite full.
I love that. It's such a great sentiment. I feel like that's particularly in the space that we're in, people are always looking, going, if I just got that 10 property portfolio, if I just hit this magic number around X million dollars in equity, for example, then I will be happy. And I feel like we've all been guilty of that at some point.
Well, we all do, but then you
over.
go, well, only through bitter experience have I crossed over. So if I can share that with anyone else and they can save themselves the pain and do it younger, then it's a bit different. I mean, that whole FIRE movement, financial independence, retire early. I saw a headline the other day that said, Gen Z or whatever it is just wants to retire with nothing, and summing up that philosophy. And I'm like, I don't think that's what it's about. It's actually about what do you want to spend your time on? And so understanding that if you can get to a magical number that can give you an income that you're happy enough with, because, I mean, that guy, that Mr. Money Mustache, I think was living on 40 grand a year. Some people were like, what the hell? He got to spend all the time with his kids. He lived how he wanted to. So for him, that philosophy was genius, and it has spawned millions of people following it. But that was a low income. Like some people go, I want to live on 500 grand or 200 grand or whatever it is. Well, then you got to get to that magic number. It's just another number. Yeah. Or accept that you're never going to be financially free because you want too much.
Yeah, I think that's where I said it. Like, I think the psychology of money says it. Like your happiness will only equate to that level of income that you're happy to sit at. Otherwise, you're just going to keep that income, that retire early number just starts to go up, and you're trading trading appreciation for expectations.
And unmet expectations are very unsatisfying.
Vanessa, thank you so much. I really appreciate your candor. I really appreciate your honesty as well. That's what we love about these chats, for people to come in and share their life experience, share their life's work. And I want to say thank you for being so open and honest. I really appreciate it.
I've enjoyed it. You're a great conversationalist. I can see why your podcast is getting so many downloads. Congratulations. That's an amazing achievement.
I can only do some part of it. The guests do a lot of heavy lifting, which is like yourself, where they come on and connect with people and resonate through. And it's stories that you've told. And that's your book, effectively, stories that you're telling and teaching through as well. So you've been really generous. And for anyone listening, we're going to put it out as a giveaway. You're giving away copies of your book, so people are listening. So what we'll do is we'll run a bit of a promotion around that. And if you love the episode, then what we want to know is, what did you get out of it? Drop us a DM, drop us a message as well, because we want to know that you've absorbed that and you've got something out of it and something you can implement in your own life, and we'll reward you with a copy of Vanessa's book. So stay tuned on more details around that. Vanessa will include details of your socials. People can follow you, get in touch, and we'll look forward to your third book coming out as well.
Yeah, that one's going to be written under a pseudonym, and it's a racy fiction book. There will be no money lessons in that book.
I think you might reach a bigger audience with that.
Well, I'm hoping to.
With a bio like that. Well, awesome. Good luck with it.
Yeah,
Can't wait to see it, and all the best to you and your boys.
Thanks for having me.
Excellent. That's a wrap for another episode of the Australian Property Investment Podcast. As I said, if you loved it, leave us a review, but better off, tell someone to check this episode, tag them, send them a link to it, and share the knowledge. Thanks very much.